It really feels like I haven't done these videos in forever. Hey everyone, I'm Anika, and I make videos about everything I question and overthink, and today we're breaking down Season 2, Episode 1 of Twin Peaks, aka May the Giant Be With You. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we start right where the Season 1 finale left off. Coop is lying on the floor of his room, bleeding out after being shot. Andy is on the phone asking if he's okay. Now, Coop was indeed wearing a bulletproof vest, but as we later find out, he shifted it to get a tick that was underneath it. Then, the room service shows up, and this is where it gets very Twin Peaks-esque. The man who brings Cooper his room service, which is warm milk, is remarkably and almost supernaturally calm about the whole situation. There's a man bleeding on the floor, and this guy is just offering him milk. But Coop musters all his strength and asks the man to call the doctor. And the man says sure, but then he just hangs up the phone on Andy, and that's where it ends. And then he leaves. Then he comes back saying he heard about Coop, and he repeats this action again. And then the third time, he comes back, gives Coops a thumbs up, and Coop, once again gathering all his strength, reciprocates with a thumbs up. It's one of the strangest interactions I've watched yet, but then again, I'm watching Twin Peaks, so I suppose nothing is really strange at the end of the day. Now, after the room service man finally leaves for good, a spirit or a presence materializes in the room. Now, this person, this spirit, this whatever it is referred to as the Giant. And the Giant tells Coop he will share 3 things with him, and that when these things come true, Coop will believe him. When Coop asks who is he, the Giant says to think of him as a friend. Coop then asks where this friend comes from, and the Giant responds, "Where have you gone?" Which is fascinating because that could mean where have you gone within Twin Peaks, or it could be a reference to some kind of in-between space that the show seems to be hinting at. Now, the 3 things the Giant tells Coop are 1. There is a man in a smiling bag. 2. The owls are not what they seem. And 3. Without chemicals, he points. Now, regarding the owls, I know you guys said that I should pay attention to them. Laura's Secret Diary also reinforced that idea that I should pay attention to the owls, because in an entry dated August 31st, 1988, Laura writes that she woke up hoping that what the log lady said, that owls are sometimes big, and it meant something good was going to happen now that she was working at One-Eyed Jack's. And Laura started treating the owls as a good omen. But here's where it gets murky for me. Throughout Twin Peaks, owls keep on showing up. We see them, we hear them, and later when Coop, Hawk, Harry, and Doc Hayward go to the log lady's cabin, she says something along the lines of, "The owls won't see us here." So the question I have now, did Laura misread the omen? Were the owls actually ever a good sign? Or did she just project that meaning onto them because she desperately needed one? Now, the Giant is also very specific about one thing. He says he is permitted to say these 3 things. Permitted by whom? Now, my gut instinct tells me that if I am right about what I think Bob is, that he is this general evil that lives within us all, then the Giant, and whatever force he belongs to, I think, is the opposing pole. The Giant also takes Coop's ring, saying it will be returned when he finds these things to be true, and he says, "We want to help you. Not I, but we." So there is a collective here, possibly of good. Now, if that's the case, and this makes me go back to Laura and her diary. Why wasn't she helped? Or maybe I completely missed the signs where she was helped. I guess I have to reread the diary. But I don't remember her being helped and her being guided like this. But moving on, the Giant also tells Coop that Leo is locked inside a hungry horse, and that there's a clue at Leo's house. Now this made me think, could Leo be a kind of vessel? A conduit for whatever dark force is moving through Twin Peaks? Or it could also mean, and it could be both of these things at the same time, is the hungry horse just another cage that holds someone who got swallowed up by the chaos? Now, the Giant also very practically points out that Coop needs medical attention. And speaking of which, where the hell is Andy? Because in the Season 1 finale, he said Coop was shot. He knows Coop is shot. Where's the cavalry? Meanwhile, over at One-Eyed Jack's, Audrey is waiting. Her father comes into the room, we saw this in the season 1 finale, and Audrey immediately hides behind the bed curtains. Watching this whole sequence was genuinely one of the most uncomfortable things I've seen so far in Twin Peaks, and it brings me back to what Coop said to her in season 1, where he tells her that people will take advantage of that vulnerable heart of hers. Whether he meant it platonically or as a warning, I think it applies here in full force because Audrey is so impressionable. Emotionally, she still carries the weight of someone much younger than 18, and she put all her faith in the idea that Coop would come in and pull her out of this. But as luck would have it though, Jerry comes in to tell Ben there's a situation, a SNAG, a snag, and Ben leaves. We return to the Great Northern. Coop is still on the floor, still bleeding, and here's the thing. I don't know enough about gunshot wounds to say definitively whether it should have been fatal, but it still surprised me that he made it. But Coop, being Coop, gains consciousness and starts recording a message to Diane. And then, finally, the gang shows up. It only took the rest of the night. Now, at the hospital, Harry asks if Coop saw the gunman. He did not. The shooter was wearing a mask, because of course he was. Then, Lucy brings Coop up to speed on everything that happened in the season 1 finale. 1. Leo Johnson was shot by Hank, though they don't know it was Hank yet. Jacques was strangled by Leland, though they don't know it was Leland. 3. The mill burned because Leo set it on fire, though they don't know that either. 4. Shelley and Pete suffered smoke inhalation. 5. Catherine and Josie are missing. And 6. Nadine is in a coma after taking sleeping pills. And I'm looking through my notes right now, and all I wrote here, all in one night. But then we cut to the Palmer household. Maddie is in the living room staring at the carpet, and Sarah is watching her. Sarah asks if Maddie misses her mom. Maddie doesn't respond right away, and then she says she had the strangest dream ever. And Sarah's reaction to this statement is what caught my attention, and I think I might know why. Based on the diary, Laura had bad dreams her whole life. Strange, disturbing dreams. Some of them Sarah knew about, especially the ones when Laura was younger. So hearing Maddie say she had a strange dream in that house probably hit Sarah somewhere very specific. Now Sarah, of course, asks what the dream was about, and it seems more like she is concerned than just curious what the dream was, right? Because of Laura. I think Sarah, in this moment, waiting for Maddie to respond, is bracing herself for the possibility that whatever came for Laura hadn't left, and now Maddie is seeing it too. But then Maddie says that the dream was about the rug she was staring at. Sarah asks if Laura was in it, but the conversation gets cut off because Leland walks in, singing, happy, cheery, with his hair completely white. Mind you, this is an overnight change, maybe even less than a full night. Sarah is stunned and chases after Leland, and then Maddie is left alone in the living room and she sees the rug change color. So she starts screaming because apparently something terrified her so much about this rug. Now, at the Great Northern, Ben and Jerry are running through their agenda. 3 things are on Ben's list. 1. Locate Catherine and confirm she's ready to take the fall. 2. Get a full medical report on Leo Johnson and assess his recovery prospects. And 3. Get an explanation from Hank as to why Leo is not dead. Then, Leland walks in, singing, happy once again, saying he's back to work. And Ben and Jerry are visibly thrown by this, but it cuts short, so we don't know how that conversation went. Coop and Harry go to Leo's house to reconstruct what happened the night before. Hawk finds Leo's duster, which reeks of gasoline, connecting Leo directly to the fire mill. Then Albert arrives. Andy, startled, runs to alert Harry and steps on a loose floorboard that snaps up and hits him in the head. And as much as this is very Andy, it does lead them to find that underneath this loose section of the wooden platform, there are hidden a pair of new boots and cocaine. Maddie is sitting in the double R wearing Laura's sunglasses. Donna comes in, sees them, and thanks Maddie for bringing them over because Donna apparently wanted Laura's sunglasses. Maddie then proceeds to break her glasses, saying she never wants to wear them again. Now, I was a little bit shocked when Maddie did this, but it just clicked for me. I think she broke them because of what she saw at the Palmer house earlier. If she can't see clearly, maybe she can't get scared again. Who knows, that might be her logic. Now this scene is also very interesting because we see a shift in character from both Donna and Maddie, mainly Donna, and it feels extremely abrupt to me. And while I still don't know what actually triggered this, I think I might have an idea, and it not only stems from them listening to the tape, but Laura's diary also sheds some light on this. And I think what's going on with Donna is rooted in something that happened a while back. Donna and Laura had this experience together as younger teens. They went to the book house, met some guys, drank, made out with them, nothing too extreme. But it was a deviation from how Donna was raised. And after that night, Laura recounts, the two of them kind of stopped talking for a bit. Not out of resentment, but out of this shared unspoken discomfort. And when they do finally reconnect, Donna admitted she thought Laura didn't want to be her friend because of how inexperienced she was. And Laura thought Donna didn't want to be her friend because of what Laura was becoming. So basically a miscommunication. But my theory is that after listening to Laura's tapes, Donna allowed herself access to a side of herself she'd kept locked away. Whether that's healthy or not is a separate question, but I think this does explain the shift. Now, Donna also doesn't seem particularly worried about their involvement in the Jacoby situation, unlike Maddie. She tells Maddie the only way this doesn't come back to them is if they stay quiet. And the only thing I hope is that they remembered to take the tape they sent to Jacoby of Maddie. That's their only loose end. But then, something interesting happens. Donna receives a letter at the Double R telling her to look into the Meals on Wheels program. And I am 99.9% sure that that's Harold reaching out. This is why. Harold has Laura's diary, and I'm also 99.9% certain that Harold read that diary. And if he did, then he knows how much Laura valued her friendship with Donna. And since Harold is agoraphobic, sending a letter to a place where Donna is likely to turn up is the most logical way for him to make contact without ever having to leave his house. And you might be wondering, well, why doesn't he just give it to the police? Well, I think this is exactly the reason why he never called the police about the diary, because eventually they would have needed him to come in, and he just couldn't do that. So I'm very much looking forward to meeting Harold. Then we cut to the sheriff's department and Albert is examining Coop. In this conversation, we find out that Albert was in fact sent back to Twin Peaks by their supervisor, Gordon Cole. And Albert tells Coop that the shooter was right-handed, between 5'6" and 5'10" inches tall, and fired from less than 3 feet away. And this is what we know so far about the shooter. Then Albert asks Coop a really good follow-up question.
Meanwhile, one of your principal suspects is killed in his hospital bed and the other is shot in his living room. You tell me. Vigilante justice or just clean country living?
Now, as much as I love Coop, I do think his connection to Twin Peaks and his falling in love with this place is very quick. And while the people here that he meets are mostly good, like Truman, Doc Hayward, Andy, Hawk, Lucy, etc., you need to still have at least some degree of skepticism when you're working a murder case. You never know who's working against you, but because there is so much happening in Twin Peaks, the murder, the Bookhouse Boys, the woods, the connections between Laura and half the town, he can't hold all of it simultaneously. Now, I'm not saying Coop isn't keeping his eye on the prize anymore, but I think that prize is becoming more blurred with each episode. That is why Albert is a really good addition to this team. The only problem with Albert is the delivery. I think you can keep your guard up without being openly hostile to everyone around you. But maybe that will change. Who knows? Then, Andy comes in with some crucial information. He says that Leo Johnson was locked up in Hungry Moose, Montana on February 9th, 1988. And here's why that date matters. On February 9th, 1988, 2 things happened. Laura was attacked by 4 truckers in a situation that could have turned fatal, and Teresa Banks was murdered. Now, I don't know if there's a direct connection between those 4 truckers and Teresa Banks. I highly doubt it, but I do find the timing very interesting. But what this does confirm is that Leo Johnson has an alibi for the night of Teresa Banks' murder. Then, the one-armed man, Michael Philip Gerard, walks into the sheriff's department. He says he's there to sell Truman some shoes. He doesn't look well, and then we just never see him again in this episode. Meanwhile, Harry interviews James, and James's most interesting contribution is this.
I never put it together until I heard the tape where she says this guy can really light my fire. Well, I remember this one night when we first started seeing each other. She was still doing drugs then. Well, we were in the woods, and she started saying this scary poem over and over about fire. And then she said, "Would you like to play with fire, little boy? Would you like to play with Bob?"
James doesn't know what it means, Harry doesn't know what it means, but it's surprising that Harry doesn't mention this to Cooper. Well, at least yet. Because I'm pretty sure when Cooper had his dream, he told Harry about Bob. So let's just hope Harry does bring this up in conversation. Momentarily after, Coop walks in and asks James for the other half of the necklace. James is surprised, but ultimately gives it to Cooper, saying that he found this in Jacoby's office in the coconut. Now this is interesting because, and this will go back to what I said about Coop earlier, is that in this scene, he seems genuinely surprised as to why Jacoby would have taken the necklace and hidden it in a coconut. He doesn't seem to consider that these kids might have been running their own parallel investigation, and that surprises me because by now, Coop knows enough to know that people in Twin Peaks are rarely telling him the full story. So this is what I mean about the prize being blurred for him. Now, at the hospital, Doc Hayward examines Jacoby, who seems somewhat incoherent. Coop and Harry show up, and Coop tells Jacoby point blank, no more mumbo jumbo, just answers. Finally. So Jacoby walks them through the night Laura died. He says he followed the man in the red Corvette. We know that is Leo Johnson, but Leo eluded him near the old Sawmill Road. That's when Jacoby spotted Donna and James on a motorcycle, so he followed them on foot, watched them bury something, and after they left, he went to unbury it. That's how he ended up with the necklace. Jacoby also says that the last time he saw Laura, she seemed to have reached a kind of peace, and that he believes she allowed herself to be killed, that she had arrived at this decision. And I have to agree again with Jacoby, because her last diary entry reads like someone who has chosen a door. She says, "I hope I see you again. I can't stay sober anymore. I just can't. I have to be numb." And then there's also an entry from somewhere between August 2nd and August 10th, 1988, where she writes, "I think of death these days as a companion I long to meet." So yes, I believe she was ready as much as one can be ready for death. Now, because Nadine is also in a coma in the hospital, the gang meets Ed, and Ed says the only person who can bring her back is herself. She has to want to come back. And then Ed admits that there was a part of him that didn't want to stop her. He doesn't say why he didn't want to stop her, but he doesn't have to either, because of everything we saw in season 1, Norma. That's just it. He then continues to tell Coop the story of how he and Nadine ended up together. Norma ran off with Hank, and Ed was blindsided by this because he was convinced they were going to get married. So he got drunk, and coincidentally or not, Nadine was there. They drove to Montana, and he proposed to her. Now, on their honeymoon, Ed accidentally shot out Nadine's eye, and she stayed. And she never blamed him or hated him for this. I don't know about you, but this tells me everything about who Nadine is. She is someone who, by her own account, was invisible, a gray mouse nobody noticed, until Ed asked her to marry him, and she took that commitment absolutely seriously. The tragedy is that Ed, almost from the beginning, was looking for a way out, and he never got one, and now she's in a coma, and he's standing in the hospital talking about Norma. It just makes me feel very bad for Nadine. I think that feeling has been with me since season 1 because I think it's so unfair to her. Is she a little bit weird? Yeah, but ultimately she doesn't seem to be a bad person. And the fact that Ed would treat her this way, it just makes me like him less. Now, after that conversation, Coop is walking through the hospital corridors and sees the smiling bag the giant referred to. Please don't ask me what that means because I have no clue. The only idea that pops into my mind is that maybe he should look at Jacques' body because that was the most recent body that was moved in such a bag, but other than that, I have no clue what that could mean. Now, back at the sheriff's department, Coop is reconstructing what had happened on February 23rd, 1989. The night Laura Palmer was killed, she had 2 appointments. The first comes from her second diary, where she references being nervous about meeting Jay, which Coop believes refers to James Hurley. The second, before she left the house, she received a phone call allegedly from Leo. And during his voiceover, we are shown a montage of Twin Peaks, of the donuts, and of the red stoplight. Now, all of you, maybe not all, but a lot of you mentioned I should pay attention to the lights. Well, here I am, paying attention to the lights. And I don't know what it means yet, but I have some theories. Red means stop, obviously, which could mean Coop's theory is incomplete or just completely wrong. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm onto something here. Now, this scene also confirms the existence of a third man, someone who took both Laura and Ronette to the train car. And because the third man specifically wanted Laura dead rather than Ronette, Ronette had time to escape. After this reconstruction, Harry brings Pete home. There is a note on the counter from Josie, and it says she had to leave town for emergency business in Seattle. Pete tells Harry that she makes this trip about once every 3 months, and that he thinks she goes there to indulge a secret vice: shopping. Pete is completely wrong. I don't know what the vice is, or what the extent of her business in Seattle actually is, but knowing what we know about Josie, it's definitely not shopping. Not by a long shot. Then the phone rings. It's a call for Josie, from someone reporting back to Hong Kong, and this just tells me one thing: Josie is in trouble. Once again, I don't know the extent, but definitely in trouble.
Have you seen Audrey today?
No, I haven't.
Back in Ben's office, Hank is there. He reports back on the earlier agenda. Josie left town the previous night, putting distance between herself and the fire, which makes sense. Leo has brain damage, according to the doctors, and Hank also believes Catherine is dead. But something is telling me that Catherine is not dead at all. I think she's just in hiding. So them getting so giddy and happy about the fact that their plan is working, I think it's a red herring. Over at the Hayward house, Donna makes a call to Norma and asks if she can take over Laura's Meals on Wheels route. Norma agrees. Then we cut to a dinner with the Palmers, where Donna's youngest sister, Kirsten, I actually didn't know she had another sister, plays the piano for everyone. And Harriet, the middle sister, reads a poem about Laura, about the woods and the darkness within them, and Laura as the light inside it. Leland is smiling through the whole thing, and Sarah is barely holding herself together. Then Dr. Hayward asks Leland about his hair, and Leland says it changed overnight, and that it helped him turn a corner, that a great weight was lifted from his heart. And I am almost certain he's talking, at least in part, about killing Jacques. And this was his version of justice. Meanwhile, Sarah doesn't understand any of it. Then Leland says he feels like dancing and singing. And at first, it seems like the relief of someone who's had something heavy lifted, as he earlier mentioned. But then it escalates. He starts behaving erratically. He falls and faints. And when Doc Hayward helps him regain his consciousness, the first thing Leland says is,
I feel happy. Begin the begin.
If you know what that means, let me know in the comments down below. Now, as the episode is ending, Coop is back in his room, and he's recording a message to Diane saying that sleep deprivation is a one-way ticket to temporary psychosis, which is interesting because the first time Laura writes about sleep deprivation in her diary, she says she hadn't slept in 3 days, the same amount that Coop tells Diane he hadn't slept for. And I'll come back to this connection in my next video about the tapes of Special Agent Cooper. Then Coop starts to wonder whether the giant was just a product of his own sleep-deprived mind. He tells Diane he's finally going to bed, and he does. Then the giant returns. He tells Coop not to search for all the answers at once. The path is formed by laying one stone at a time, and that, maybe, is the answer to the red stoplight. Coop was trying to lay it all out in one go, when this is something that has to be approached piece by piece. The giant also says, one person saw the third man, only known to you, ready now to talk. And my first thought is immediately Ronette. Maybe she will regain consciousness soon, and as we in the last minutes of the show learn, I think she does. And then the giant says, you forgot something. I believe he is talking about Audrey's note. Now, when the giant leaves, there's a golden light that returns into Coop's chest, as if whatever the giant is, this force, this guiding present, it lives in Coop somehow. And the final scene is at the hospital. Ronette wakes up, she has a vision of the train car, Bob is screaming, Laura's body is beside him, Bob runs towards Ronette, and then she watches him kill Laura. And at the end, she is screaming. The giant did say one person was ready to talk, and I think he meant Ronette, and that is how Season 2, Episode 1 ends. I absolutely loved this episode, and I think the reason I loved it so much is because I came into it having watched all of Season 1 and read The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. So for the first time in 8 episodes, threads were truly starting to connect, and that just made the whole experience a lot more rewarding. And yeah, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday for the tapes of Special Agent Cooper. Bye!